Welcome to our video, which will show you how to set up and carry out the GCSE Chemistry required practical on neutralisation. In this video, we're going to determine the reacting volumes of a strong acid and a strong alkali by titration. For this experiment, you will need a 250 milliliter conical flask, a white tile, some phenolphthalein indicator, 0.1 molar sodium hydroxide solution, 0.08 molar sulfuric acid and a funnel. You'll also need a retort stand, a burette holder, a 25 milliliter pipette and a pipette filler. The first stage of the titration is to use the glass pipette to measure out exactly 25 centimeters cubed of the sodium hydroxide into the flask. So the first thing we do is decant some of the sodium hydroxide into a 100 ml beaker. We never go straight from the bottle. And then we need to fit the pipette filler onto the end of the pipette, just with a small shove, nothing too forceful, because you don't want your students to break the glass and end up cutting themselves. We then use the roller on the side of the pipette filler to draw the liquid up into the pipette, and it starts to fill this chamber. Once it passes this chamber, it is going to rise up quite quickly, so warn your students it will start to shoot up this tube, and we want the bottom of that curve, the bottom of the meniscus, just to sit on the blue line there. The next stage is to transfer it into the flask, and the easiest way for your students to do this is to take the pipette filler off and simply let the sodium hydroxide run out into the flask. Once that's run out, you'll notice that there's still a few drops of sodium hydroxide in the pipette. So the next stage is just to touch it on the surface of the liquid in the flask. That will take one more drop out, and there's still some of the sodium hydroxide in the pipette. It's important that your students don't use the pipette filler to try and blow that out at the end. The pipette is designed this way so that even when it's got that little bit left in there, it's delivered exactly 25 centimeters cubed of sodium hydroxide into the flask. The first thing your students need to do before they start putting the acid in the burette is make sure the burette tap is closed. So they need to make sure it's in the horizontal position, and then we're ready to start pouring the acid into the burette. And we're going to do that by first of all adding it to a 100 cm cubed beaker, and then we're going to use a funnel to pour it in so that it just goes above the zero line up here. Now it's good practice to get your students to do this with the stand on the floor, so that if they spill it and they put too much in, it's not going to overflow all over themselves, it's just then going onto the floor. So that's now just above the zero line on the burette. We then take the funnel out of the burette, put the beaker of acid underneath the burette, and we slowly open the tap until the excess runs out of the burette and the bottom of the meniscus is then sat resting on the zero line. Perfect. We then discard the contents of the beaker because that's just the excess acid that we've just run out of the burette. We then add between 5 and 10 drops of the phenolphthalein indicator to the sodium hydroxide in the flask, and that should turn pink with the alkali. We give it a good swirl to make sure it's mixed thoroughly, and we place it on top of a white tile, and the whole lot then goes underneath the burette. The students adjust the tap of the burette so that it's just coming out drop by drop, so that we're adding the acid to the alkali drop by drop, and all the time we make sure we swirl it to thoroughly mix the acid and the alkali. And they keep doing this until the phenolphthalein turns colourless. And the point where it just turns colourless, they would then close the tap and stop there. We've just reached the point where the pink colour has disappeared, so I've closed the tap and I'm going to read off the volume of acid added by reading the burette. The students then read the burette scale and record the volume of acid used to 2 decimal places. They then record their results in a suitable results table. The students would then repeat the whole process until they've done 3 complete titrations, and finally they would calculate a mean from their 3 results. We hope you found our practical advice useful. For expert technical support, please contact the Philip Harris Technical Support Team on techsupport@philipharris.co.uk or visit our blog at philipharris.co.uk/blog.